The debate over guns in America is louder than ever, with passionate voices on both sides making their case in the streets, in legislatures, and in the courts. The conversation is echoing from local communities all the way up to the Supreme Court, where the nation's most powerful judges are weighing in on what the Second Amendment really means in today's world. Recent court decisions are reshaping who can carry a gun and where, directly impacting public safety, individual rights, and the daily lives of millions of Americans. The catalyst for this new wave of legal battles? The 2022 Supreme Court decision in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruen, which made it much harder for states to justify gun restrictions and set a new, tougher standard for evaluating gun laws. Since Bruen, a legal tug-of-war has erupted across the country, with every new law and challenge viewed through this stricter lens. Courts are now grappling with how to apply this precedent to a wide range of gun regulations, from background checks to bans on certain types of firearms. In April, the Supreme Court declined to hear a major challenge to New York's new gun law, leaving its strict regulations in place for now, and signaling that the legal landscape is still shifting. Meanwhile, states like Tennessee and Washington are seeing dramatic, often contradictory rulings as lower courts interpret the Supreme Court's guidance in different ways, leading to confusion and uncertainty. These cases force us to ask difficult questions. What does the Second Amendment protect today? And how do we balance the right to bear arms with the need to keep our communities safe? The answers are far from simple. The outcomes of these court battles determine where guns are allowed, from parks and schools to public transit, and what kinds of firearms can be sold or carried in public. The result is a patchwork of laws, confusion for gun owners and law enforcement alike, and ongoing legal fights that show no sign of slowing down. Understanding these rulings is crucial. They shape the rules in your neighborhood, affect your family's safety, and influence the rights you have as a citizen. As we unpack these cases, we see the evolving state of gun rights in America, and get a glimpse of where this contentious issue is headed in the years to come. Let's dive into the latest developments, explore the key court battles, and break down what they mean for all of us, no matter where we live. Some of the most significant and far-reaching changes in gun laws are happening at the state level, where local courts and legislatures are actively redrawing the boundaries of what's legal and what's not. In Tennessee, a recent court decision struck down long-standing bans on guns in state parks, as well as a law that allowed police to arrest people simply for carrying a gun with the intent to go armed. This marks a dramatic shift in how the state approaches public carry. The court, citing the Supreme Court's Bruen decision, found that Tennessee failed to demonstrate a historical tradition of banning firearms in parks. As a result, the definition of sensitive places where guns can be restricted has been narrowed, making it harder for the state to justify such bans. The ruling also shifted the burden of proof onto the state, making it significantly more difficult to criminalize carrying a firearm for self-defense. Now, the government must provide clear historical evidence to support any restrictions. The Attorney General may appeal the decision, but for now, Tennessee's legal landscape has shifted, and gun rights advocates are watching closely to see what happens next. Meanwhile, in Washington, the state Supreme Court took a different approach, upholding a ban on high-capacity magazines. The court ruled that these magazines aren't protected arms under the Second Amendment, setting a new precedent for the state. By sidestepping the Bruen test, the court framed large magazines as military hardware rather than items essential for self-defense, drawing a sharp line between civilian and military use. The case is now being appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court, highlighting a growing split among lower courts. The central question: are magazines holding more than 10 rounds constitutionally protected, or can states ban them outright? The Supreme Court's decision to hear, or ignore, this case will have sweeping consequences, potentially shaping gun laws nationwide for years to come. These state-level battles reveal the ongoing high-stakes struggle to define the limits of gun control in a post-Bruen world, with passionate voices on both sides. The rules are changing fast and the stakes are high. Every new ruling or law can have immediate and far-reaching effects. What happens in one state can quickly ripple across the country, influencing lawmakers, courts, and citizens far beyond state borders. The legal fight is far from over, and the next chapter in America's gun debate is already being written in courtrooms and capitals across the nation. At the heart of the Washington case is the high-capacity magazine. These are devices that hold more than 10 rounds of ammunition, allowing shooters to fire repeatedly without reloading. Gun control advocates argue they're not needed for self-defense and are often used in mass shootings. Gun rights supporters say these are standard equipment for many popular firearms and essential for protection. The legal question: are these magazines arms protected by the Second Amendment, or dangerous accessories that can be banned? The answer could reshape gun laws nationwide. The Bruen decision changed everything about how courts judge gun laws. Before, courts balanced public safety against gun rights. Now, the government must prove any restriction matches the nation's historical tradition of firearm regulation. This means finding laws from the 1700s or 1800s that are similar to today's rules, a tough standard for modern issues. Critics say this handcuffs lawmakers, making it nearly impossible to address today's gun violence. Supporters argue it restores the Second Amendment's original meaning and limits judicial overreach. The result, a wave of lawsuits with judges and lawyers digging through history to justify or strike down modern gun laws. The Bruen test is now the battleground for America's gun debate. With the landmark Bruen decision now in place, all eyes turn to the Supreme Court's next moves. Would the justices clarify the boundaries of gun rights, or leave states to navigate the aftermath on their own? In April, the court declined to hear a challenge to New York's new gun law, effectively letting the state's strict regulations stand for the time being. This decision, or lack thereof, sent ripples through the legal and political landscape. For gun control supporters, the court's silence was a relief, signaling that states could still enact tough measures. For gun rights advocates, it was a major disappointment, as they hoped for a sweeping ruling in their favor. The court's refusal to intervene left New York's bans on guns in parks, on public transit, and in healthcare facilities intact, at least for now. These sensitive places remain off-limits to firearms, pending further legal challenges. But by not taking the case, the justices avoided setting a national precedent. This left key constitutional questions unresolved and lower courts without clear guidance. The same pattern emerged in June, when the court declined to hear a challenge to Rhode Island's ban on high-capacity magazines, leaving that law in place as well. Now, Washington's magazine ban is on the docket, and both sides are watching closely. The court's next move remains uncertain, fueling speculation and debate. This selective engagement by the Supreme Court has created confusion and a patchwork of laws across the country. States are left to interpret the Second Amendment in their own ways, leading to vastly different rules depending on where you live. While the court has ruled on some federal gun laws, it's avoided the biggest and most controversial questions, like bans on assault weapons, magazine capacity limits, and restrictions in sensitive places. Until the Supreme Court speaks clearly and decisively, legal battles will continue to rage in lower courts, with judges and lawyers left to interpret the law without definitive guidance. For now, the nation waits, hoping for a definitive answer that could finally bring clarity to America's gun laws. These court decisions have real consequences for everyday Americans. In New York, strict gun laws remain, requiring rigorous permit processes and keeping many public spaces gun-free. Supporters feel safer. Gun owners face complex regulations and hurdles. In Tennessee, the opposite is true. Recent rulings expand where guns can be carried, including parks and recreational areas. For gun rights advocates, it's a victory for self-defense. For others, it raises safety concerns. Law enforcement can no longer stop someone just for being armed, changing the dynamic in public spaces. This patchwork of laws means a gun owner traveling from Tennessee to New York faces a maze of different rules. The courts are drawing the lines that define our public spaces and sense of safety. The impact is immediate, personal, and often divisive. The legal fight over guns is shaping daily life across America. The legal landscape for guns is anything but settled. The Bruen decision opened a new, chaotic chapter, with the Supreme Court hesitant to step in again. Conflicting lower court rulings like those in Tennessee and Washington keep the issue in flux. The next big question: will the Supreme Court take up Washington's magazine ban? State legislatures are testing Bruen's limits, passing new laws and sparking more lawsuits. The fight over the Second Amendment is now a courtroom battle, state by state. These decisions go beyond legal doctrine, they shape the country we live in. The only certainty: the debate is far from over, and the next landmark decision is always just ahead.